Hello everyone, thank you very much for joining us in this next video of ours. And we follow on with our intention of developing the theme, the art of being human. In Portuguese, a human being and being human, you write just the same way. So in English, you can make a joke, you can play with it, saying the art of being human. It has an effect we don't have in Portuguese, but on the other hand, in Portuguese, we have gender possibilities in the nouns where we can play with ideas in a different way. So today we're going to dedicate ourselves to thinking over something that comes up is usually very common when we are practicing mindfulness, or if you like, when we are meditating, or if you like, when we stop and really think about ourselves and think about life in a deeper fashion. That is envy, rivalry, disputing, competition. It is very common. We have it in our nature. We have this natural tendency, which usually we attribute as a defect or something wrong or a flaw. And it is my expectation that today we might be able to bring some light, shed some light on that, and show things are not so dramatic as they seem. So I would begin recalling all of you that brilliant movie, brilliant film, but with Christopher Lambert, which is Highlander. Highlander is a movie that, for those of us who do not recall the movie, I'll just give a slight refreshing here. It's about a group, a subset of humans which are born with the possibility of being immortal. They can only be killed, they can only die if they are beheaded with a sword. That's the only way you can kill them. You can't shoot them with a bullet, you cannot hurt their body, you can only behead them. And when one of them is beheaded by another one, the one who killed this one receives all his powers, receives all the mental power that the deceived one had. So there is a saying among them, is that there can only be one. And then this specific fellow, he's from the Highlands, and he receives a visit of one of the other guys like him that are immortal. He found himself immortal, and then he receives a visit from this other fellow who is an immortal. And instead of killing him, this fellow teaches him. And then finally, he gets beheaded, but not by the hero. I think that's how the story goes. But anyway, what we focus on today is the following, is the proposal. Now, you kill me, and all I have goes to you. That's very interesting, because probably that's the way that several of our disputes were solved in the past. Way behind in the Neolithic, before history, Stone Age, you had a good stock of food. I'd just go there, I'd kill you, and I'd take all your food. Probably what did occur. And it's not so different to what happens when we suffer these regrettable assaults in the streets. People put a weapon up against our bodies and demand what we have in our wallet. The idea is that there can only be one. Consequently, if I see another immortal, I am automatically seeing a rival. I am automatically seeing someone I must behead if I wish to go forward, or I might be beheaded if he is sufficiently ambitious. So it's not exactly a friendly situation, is it? It's not a situation where you can really fall asleep and trust your partner. But that is something that comes from something in our nature. And it's an essential misunderstanding when, after we are grown-ups, after we are dealing in life, we are working in our corporations and our companies, working in our offices. It's a gross mistake to believe there can only be one. When we come down to real life, what you have usually are effective groups, not brilliant individuals. And if you have one individual who is especially brilliant and he seems to be in front of the whole thing, usually he is what we call a front man. You have a musical band, and then you have the front man. The front man is not always the principal composer. The front man is not always the brain behind the whole thing. Sometimes he is, but sometimes he isn't. The fact is, the point is the band. The integrants change, but the musical band continues. An orchestra, Philharmonic Orchestra in Berlin. The integrants, since I started following what they do, the integrants have changed. The team has changed completely. So it's a complete different team today than it was maybe 30, 40 years ago. So the point is, we advance, we have progressed as a species, as a civilization, as a group, through groups, through efficient teams, and not exactly brilliant individuals. For some reason, the idea of a brilliant individual is something that is very pleasurable to us, very desirable in a certain way. But the fact is, you don't usually do it on yourself. You just don't do it on yourself. You have to have, definitely, you might have a good idea, but then you need people with other good ideas to help you and even to stop you from making mistakes. There can only be one. I say there can only be one. There can only be one if and only if there is more than one. Another one. Because when I say there can only be one, I mean I have opponents to eliminate. But when I am really one in the world, I'm deadly lonely. The image is someone who suffers a shipwreck and is left on a deserted island. He's usually miserable. Imagine the first night, the first evening after the wreck. Imagine the 100th evening by yourself. It's easy to lose hope. And you keep on the rules and regulations you knew when you last were in contact with a human being, with another human being. We have the example of that Japanese soldier who was left on a deserted island taking care of some equipment. And he was some equipment was left there in the Pacific, in an island, small island, and they put this soldier to take care of it. And he was found decades later. He was found decades later at his post, and he was condecorated. He received a medal, and he was surprised to know that the Second World War had finished. It was over. So when you're completely alone, you go by the rules that you last heard. And where do the rules come from? From someone else. So there can only be one is deeply paradoxical and deeply, why not, stupid. Think in these terms. If I eliminate the ones who are like me, more will be left for me. It's just way too miserable when we think we are beings who have progressed, who have grown, who have evolved through social interaction. So, rivalry, despite this, there can only be one. Let's think on rivalry, just simply, in an innocent way. You don't have to eliminate, you don't have to do away with others. But you just want to do something as well as someone else. You want to be as wealthy as someone else. You want to be as clever. You want to have similar looks. Whatever. Rivalry is part of our social skills, and it is important. It's several points of our life. It is important. It's based on competing and disputing. It can take in a direction of enmity. But on the other hand, These identification possibilities are extremely important in our development as human beings. So, the first step, you would like to be a physician, the first step you need to take to get to such an idea is you have seen physicians on TV, or you have physicians in your family, or something, some example, some image on another person inspires us. And that comes from, that's the same root which rivalry is born. It's the same root. So you have several examples of rivalry, and all of them, the strongest, are familial, are in families. Needless to quote the story of Abel and Cain, when both made offers to heavenly beings, and one was killed by the other one through envy. Then you have Esau and Jacob. It's another fraternity, a fraternal example of rivalry. Romulus and Remus, the mythical founders of Rome, which Romulus kills Remus. And then you have the Greek example, maybe the most horrible. These are not biographic or not mythological. They're part of a theater play, which is Atreus and Thyest. And it is so, they have such a bitter enmity, the two. I believe they were twins, if I'm not mistaken. Esau and Jacob were twins too. And Atreus and Thyest were, I believe, also twins. And the highest point of their hatred, their mutual hatred, comes when one of them kills the other one's children, offers them on a dish in a banquet, and calls his brother and lets his brother eat his own children killed. And after that, he reviews what's happened. So it's the most grim, horrible story I've ever heard, to be honest. I think it's one huge horror movie. But you see how far the bitterness of fraternal envy can go. And then you have parenting rivalry too. And we have in the Greek mythology, we have Cronus, Saturn, and his children. It's a terrible story where Saturn's parents or father had the habit of devouring his children when they were born in order not to generate competition. And then Cronus was saved from that bestial ritual. But once he started having his children, then he started devouring his own children, which made him to a certain degree unforgivable. And thanks to a strategy used by his wife and by one of his children, they deceived him into swallowing a stone instead of swallowing this child of his. And then this child of his, who was not swallowed, helped mother to bring out the other children from his stomach. And then the gods from Olympus were generated. So you have a terrible story there. A father who is afraid of his children's success. And then you have still David and Absalom. Absalom is the son of David. That's a story where King David from Israel had several wives, and he bare children from all these wives. So he had an army of half-brothers in the court. And one half-brother seduced a half-sister into sex, and then he left her and went away. And that was very dishonorable in those days, in that context. So Absalom, who was her whole brother, decided to avenge her because the king didn't move. Then he goes and kills this guy. And then the king comes on him. And then he runs away from the king. And so Absalom and David are another pair of parents, of relatives, where one takes They takes justice in his own hand when justice was something attributable to the king and only to the king. So we can see that the family is a place where we develop rivalry. At least in literature that happens. The point is, the key to understanding is the following. How can we deal with our nature in an ethical way? Because once we have rivalry, and usually the first form of rivalry is rivalry for love. And usually that's what carries out through life. Because the wealthier I am, the better I will be loved. The prettier I am, the more beautiful I am, the more I will be loved. The sharper I am, the more I will be loved, and so on and so forth. That's our current mythology. That's what moves us, actually. It's much more about the power in itself, or the wealth. Power and wealth are two means through which I will be beloved. And then you see some politicians and you see some men in very high posts really striving to be loved, having their picture put in public places, wanting their names down in everything that is done, and so on and so forth. So the key to understanding is this rivalry. It can take, once you realize you have something, someone else has something you would like to have, or they have a situation you would like to be in. This can take in two directions. One is enmity and hatred. The other one is cooperation. You know, you can admire someone without wanting to destroy him or her. You might have a very good opinion of someone without necessarily wanting the same opinion about you. You can invest in what you have in similarity with that other person, or you can invest on what you have as a singularity, as a peculiarity, as an exquisite aspect toward that other person. One takes to enmity and hatred. The other one leads to cooperation. So you have someone you think is very good in what he does. You can help him improve what is already good. You don't need to be the same as him. You might as well be different. And being different is another means of conquering love. You can be loved because you are original. You can have love because you are singular, peculiar. And that is extremely important, because cooperation is what built civilization. The moments when mankind collectively developed hatred was when you have a war. So hatred takes to warfare, and cooperation takes to development, takes to evolution, takes to progression. So these are always two choices you have. These things happen in the sphere of the nations, and it happens within the individuals. You can be at war with your neighbor. You can be at war with your brother, with your sister. It's how many sib pairs, how many brothers and sisters we know that have cut relations with each other. They don't talk to each other. We have an interview with 3 brothers who are musicians, and there was only one alive. And he says with great weight on his heart that unfortunately he lost his 2 brothers precisely when he wasn't in talking terms with the brothers. So always very cautious and stepping very lightly, because you have a trio who prospered on cooperation, but then they split apart as human beings. They split apart because of rivalry, ego issues, and similar names we can give to rivalry. So the quest for exclusiveness, which is different, to singularity. Singularity, peculiarity is something I have, which is not comparable to others. But others are there with their different virtues, with their different qualities, with their different strengths. And the antidote for this rivalry of ours going in a bad direction is precisely investing in our radical uniqueness, our peculiarity, our rarity, and our singularity. So there is a saying that's very, very, very useful. It's very precise in what it inspires us, which is doing something only you can do that exact way, in that exact fashion, with that exact goal. We have a saying, so here in São Paulo we are very fond of a dish called feijoada. It's black beans, pork, and some seasoning, a lot of seasoning, and rice. We love it. So, and it's usually ate on Wednesdays and on Saturday lunchtime. It's not a very good dish for dinner because it's a little bit heavy, then you might not have a very good night. So it's usually ate at lunch. In São Paulo, we have thousands of restaurants. The big ones, the small ones, thousands of them, who make and serve feijoada on Saturday. Usually, we have one we prefer, and we might cross the city to be in that specific place to be able to eat that specific feijoada. That is about being singular. It doesn't matter, you have thousands of other feijoadas, but this one you make in a fashion that only you can do. Other people just can't hit it in that way, in that sense, with that vibration. That's about being happy. That's about living in plurality. That's what's about conquering and expanding in the world. So if you wish to be happy, if you wish to go in the direction of happiness and realization, maybe one of the best ways is to go into your radical uniqueness. And this uniqueness is what you come in contact with when you sit, when you close your eyes, and you start paying attention to your breath. You start making contact with the present moment, and in the present moment, your uniqueness. It's a wonderful way of being creative, and carry on. Don't lose heart on yourself. Don't desist of yourself. Thank you very much. See you soon. Bye-bye.